Welcome back, focused learners, to another explainer. Today, we are taking a deep dive into the truly complex history behind songs. We usually just think of music as entertainment, right? A catchy tune on the radio? But what happens when a melody is loaded with centuries of political weight? Today, we're going to explore how football chants, specifically in Scotland, became the literal battleground for deep-rooted societal, religious, and political conflicts.
So can a song actually be illegal? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a dystopian novel, doesn't it? But we really have to ask, can the lyrics you belt out alongside thousands of other fans at a sporting event legitimately land your face in a police database? Or, incredibly, put you in prison? It's a profound question about the intersection of human behavior, deep-rooted identity, and the raw power of music.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll be covering 1. The power of a song. 2. Roots of the rivalry. 3. Heritage or hate. 4. Policing the pitch. And 5. The limits of the law. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The power of a song. Beyond the 90 minutes.
For those who might not follow Scottish football closely, we need to talk about the Old Firm. That's the collective name for the absolutely massive, historic rivalry between two Glasgow-based clubs, Celtic and Rangers. And as our sources show, this isn't just a game, it's an arena where culture, religion, and conflict violently intersect. The dividing lines of this rivalry seep into literally every aspect of everyday life, from voting patterns to historical allegiances. To give you a sense of just how much political weight the government thought this rivalry actually held, check this out. Back in 1998, a former advisor in 10 Downing Street named Alistair Campbell pitched a wild idea to Prime Minister Tony Blair. He wanted to stage a special Old Firm match over in Belfast to help publicize the referendum on the Good Friday Agreement. He even suggested the teams swap kits for the day, which, if you know anything about these fan bases, is a suggestion bordering on pure insanity. The pitch went absolutely nowhere, obviously, but it perfectly highlights how the Old Firm is inextricably linked to the complex politics of Northern Ireland and the UK. Section 2. Roots of the rivalry. A century of division.
Now, to really understand the songs, we have to understand the people singing them. We're looking at two deeply ingrained, highly distinct identities clashing on the terraces. On one side, you have Celtic. Their traditional support stems from Irish Scots and the Roman Catholic community, historically waving the Irish tricolour. On the flip side, you have Rangers, traditionally supported by native Scots and Ulster Scots from a Protestant background, typically waving the Union Jack. While people often just label all of this as basic sectarianism, our sources point out that this was fundamentally a massive tension between native and immigrant populations carrying their histories directly onto the pitch.
And this division certainly didn't happen overnight. Let's walk through the timeline. Back in 1912, the Belfast shipbuilders Harlan and Wolff opened a yard in Glasgow, bringing hundreds of Ulster Protestant workers over to the city. They naturally adopted Rangers as their local team. Then, just 4 years later, the 1916 Easter Rising in Ireland completely polarized these communities. Rangers became a major symbol of British unionism, while Celtic personified Irish Catholic rebellion. Fast forward to 1989, and we get a massive cultural earthquake. Rangers manager Graeme Souness signs Mo Johnston, publicly ending the club's decades-long unwritten rule against signing Catholic players. 1998 brings the Good Friday Agreement alongside an iconic 5-1 derby match. And as we'll soon see, the tension eventually boils over, forcing the government's hand with the 2012 Offensive Behaviour Act, which later faced a massive repeal effort by 2017.
Section 3. Heritage or hate. The academics of football chants.
So what exactly happens when tens of thousands of fans start singing in unison? Well, academic researchers have actually studied this closely. They found that for fans with an Irish Catholic background, singing Irish rebel songs serves a very real social function. It allows the diaspora to assert what researchers call their alterity, basically their distinct identity and otherness without even needing to speak the language. But here's where it gets incredibly complicated: the lyrical add-ins. Fans will throw extra, often highly inflammatory lyrics right into traditional songs, which drastically changes their meaning. So while a singer might claim their intent is completely benign, just celebrating their heritage, that intent gets totally offset by how the broader public perceives that music.
And this brilliantly illustrates that exact dilemma. According to researcher Stephen R. Miller, the sectarianism of a song resides, at least in part, in the perception of the listener. Think about that for a second. It's a fascinating psychological and legal puzzle. If you sing a historical ballad, but the person sitting next to you, or a police officer watching on a camera, perceives it as a sectarian threat, who is right? Does the criminality of a song actually live entirely in the ears of the audience?
Section 4. Policing the pitch. When the government steps in.
Eventually, the authorities began treating this singing almost like a form of organized crime. We're talking borderline dystopian security measures implemented at stadiums like Windsor Park, Parkhead, and Ibrox. They massively upgraded their CCTV networks. They started taking names and photos of those shouting sectarian abuse and literally logging them into police databases. When fans bought tickets, they had to prove their identity so authorities could match known offenders to very specific seat numbers. They even set up confidential phone lines to encourage fans to name and shame anyone else singing sectarian chants.
But just watching and tracking the fans wasn't enough. The Scottish Parliament wanted real teeth behind their enforcement. That brings us to this number, 5. That is the absolute maximum number of years someone could potentially spend in prison if convicted under brand new legislation brought forward to tackle this singing.
That legislation was the Offensive Behaviour at Football and Threatening Communications Act of 2012. As noted by our sources, this law was tailor-made to specifically target the Old Firm rivalry. The government's goal was pretty straightforward on paper: reduce religious hatred by criminalizing threatening, hateful, or otherwise offensive behavior at regulated football matches as well as online. The government was attempting to use the incredibly heavy hand of the law to finally silence sectarian singing once and for all.
Section 5. The limits of the law. Can legislation change culture? The response from experts to this new law was absolutely scathing. Prominent historian Professor Sir Tom Devine actually called it the most illiberal and counterproductive act passed by our young parliament to date, labeling it a complete stain on the reputation of the Scottish legal system. Legal experts, human rights organizations, equality groups, they all piled on. At one point, a sheriff in the court system even made headlines by legally describing the law using the very Scottish slang term mince. Essentially, it was widely viewed as a massive failure that unfairly targeted football fans while doing absolutely nothing to address the actual root causes of society's sectarianism.
Ultimately, the pendulum swung back. In June of 2017, Labour member of Scottish Parliament James Kelly introduced a bill to completely repeal the 2012 Football Act. His argument was crystal clear. The law had entirely failed to tackle sectarianism. As we learned earlier, it proved way too difficult to fairly and legally enforce what constituted an offensive song when the offense often resides in the perception of the listener. Because of this, the law was eventually officially repealed.
Which leaves us with this really fascinating, lingering thought to close out our explainer today. Where exactly does cultural heritage end and sectarian hate begin? And perhaps more importantly, looking at the complex history behind these chants, can legislation ever truly silence a song that has been sung for a century? The story of the Old Firm shows us just how incredibly powerful music is. Powerful enough to forge communities, powerful enough to start riots, and powerful enough to completely outlast the very laws written to silence it. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.